Detected.
Hey, I'm Retro Rob, and welcome to Coin Detected, where we dive into the history and legacy of 80s video arcade games and the people who built them. Visit coindetected.com to listen to the latest episode. The year is 1980, and today's game is Defender. Defender was born at Williams Electronics in Chicago in late 1979, at a time when Williams was famous for pinball machines, but a newcomer to video games. A young pinball programmer named Eugene Jarvis was tasked with leading Williams' first original arcade video game project. Jarvis and his small team, including Larry DeMar, Sam Dicker, and Paul Dussault, had never built a video game before. They were given roughly 8 months to invent something exciting in time for a major industry trade show. It was a trial by fire. They experimented for months with different ideas, at one point tinkering with a space battle concept that had a rotating turret and even a vertically oriented design. Eventually, Jarvis settled on a daring new idea, a fast horizontal scrolling shooter, something basically unheard of in arcades then. He drew inspiration from earlier hits like Space Invaders and Asteroids, but wanted to push further. He even plucked the game's name, Defender, from a 60s TV courtroom drama, figuring that at least players would know their job was to defend something. Early on, though, the game still lacked a hook. With just weeks left before the deadline, Jarvis had a eureka moment. The missing ingredient was to have the player rescue their own fellow humans from the alien invaders. In the final design, the player's spaceship wasn't just blasting aliens, it also had to prevent humanoid characters on the planet below from being abducted. If an alien lander carried a human to the top of the screen, the human would fuse into a menacing mutant, a concept partly inspired by the plot of Star Trek, the motion picture, where a probe merges with another entity. This last-minute addition, the desperate save-the-humans mechanic, is what elevated Defender from a straightforward shooter into something truly innovative and intense. When Defender debuted at the AMOA trade show in November 1980, the reception was mixed, to say the least. Williams's management and arcade operators weren't sure what to make of it. Here was a game with a mind-boggling control scheme, a joystick plus 5 separate buttons, and relentlessly fast, chaotic action. They were afraid of this game, Jarvis admitted, looking back. I guess it was all the buttons. Indeed, in an era when most games had a joystick and maybe 1 or 2 buttons, Defender's control panel looked intimidating. Many trade show attendees tried it and promptly got overwhelmed. One anecdote says the very first prototype unit didn't attract any players because it was so complex, and also because the developers initially plugged in some of its ROM chips upside down, so it didn't work at first. Industry observers at the show actually predicted Defender would flop. It was competing for attention with flashier, simpler games like Pac-Man and a driving maze game called Rally X that people assumed would be the next big hit. But Eugene Jarvis wasn't interested in cutesy mascots or simplicity. He deliberately made Defender a hardcore player's game with unabashed difficulty and in-your-face style. He even jokingly referred to Defender as a macho shoot fest, a sperm game, as he crudely called it, to contrast it with the cute trend of the time. Everything about Defender was loud, aggressive, and challenging. It was, in the words of one later reviewer, the hardest significant game there is, a game that demands intense coordination and zen-like concentration to play well. Initial attempts often ended in disaster within seconds. An analysis of arcade play found the average game's first life lasted only on the order of 37 seconds for new players. But that brutal challenge turned out to be a feature, not a bug, the very thing that would keep players coming back for more. Once Defender hit real arcades in early 1981, word of its ferocious fun spread like wildfire. The very features that scared the suits at the trade show made gamers absolutely love it. That sense of mastering a nearly impossible challenge was addictive. Soon, arcades that installed Defender machines saw crowds gather around them. It became a true spectator sport. Players would line up their quarters and watch each other's games, marveling at the mayhem on screen. One witness recalled hordes of players crowding around, often 3 or 4 people deep, to watch whoever was skilled or crazy enough to last more than a minute. The game's signature sounds helped draw attention too. Defender's audio was designed to cut through the background din of a busy arcade. From the throbbing engine, thrust, to the piercing alert siren whenever a human was grabbed. You could literally hear a game of Defender from across the room. As one contemporary observer noted, in an arcade full of familiar bleeps and bloops, you always knew when someone dropped a coin into Defender because of the unmistakable eardrum-rattling sound effects. And once someone started blasting aliens in Defender, a crowd would soon form to see how long they could survive the onslaught. So, what exactly did this game throw at you? In Defender, you are the pilot of a small spaceship patrolling a horizontally scrolling planet landscape. The screen scrolls smoothly left or right as you fly, wrapping around a looping terrain, an impressive technical feat at the time. Below you on the surface wander a set of humanoid survivors, the last humans on this alien-infested planet, and above swoop wave after wave of hostile alien craft. Your mission sounds simple: protect the humans and destroy all the aliens to advance to the next wave. In practice, it's chaos, glorious, nail-biting chaos. Enemies come in several flavors, each designed to wreak havoc. The main foes are the landers, green alien ships that make a beeline for the humans on the ground. If a lander reaches a humanoid, it will kidnap them, hauling the poor, screaming human into the sky. You have only seconds to react. You must race over, guided by an on-screen radar scanner, and shoot the lander to free the captive. Then comes the next challenge. When a lander is destroyed, the human it was carrying starts plummeting back down. If they fall from too high up, they'll splatter on the ground, complete with a sad little splat sound. So you, the hero Defender, have to catch the falling humanoid with your ship and gently ferry them back to safety on the surface. Save the human, and you get a thank you bonus score. Miss them, and one of Earth's last people becomes a red smudge on the landscape. Oops. It's a brilliant risk-reward mechanic that had never quite been seen before in an arcade game, and it absolutely hooked those who played it. Conversely, if you fail to shoot a lander before it escapes with a human, that lander will fuse with its victim and transform into a much more dangerous foe, a mutant. Mutants are erratic, aggressive ships that home in on the player with wild, unpredictable movements, firing projectiles, and generally making your life miserable. As waves progress, other enemy types spice things up. Slow-moving bombers that drop mines behind them, pods that, when shot, burst into a swarm of tiny, fast swarmers that zigzag around, and the infamous baiter, a flat saucer that appears if you linger too long. Baiters zip in with incredible speed, faster than your ship, and relentlessly chase you while firing, essentially a punishment for taking too much time. They have a thin, hard-to-hit profile and are widely regarded as one of the nastiest foes in the game. Clearing all standard enemies, landers, bombers, pods, etc., moves you to the next wave, but any remaining humans carry over. And here's the kicker. If at any point all of your humans die, whether picked off by aliens or accidentally killed in the crossfire, the planet explodes in a blinding flash. Suddenly the entire terrain is gone, replaced by open space, and every remaining lander on screen instantly turns into a mutant. Now you're effectively in a doomsday wave filled with mutants, a nearly hopeless scenario for all but the most expert players. Survive until the next level multiple of 5, Wave 5, Wave 10, etc., and the planet is miraculously restored with a new set of humans, giving you a chance to fight on. This dramatic cycle, struggling to keep humans alive to prevent utter chaos, made Defender incredibly dynamic and intense compared to the static single-screen games that preceded it. Let's talk about those controls and what made them so challenging. Defender didn't use the standard one-stick, one-button setup common in its day. Instead, Williams engineered a unique layout. An up-down joystick controlled your ship's vertical movement, but horizontal movement was managed with 2 buttons: thrust, to propel your ship forward in whichever direction you're currently facing, and a reverse button that instantly flips your direction 180 degrees. On top of that, you have a fire button to shoot your laser, a smart bomb button that unleashes a screen-clearing blast. You start with a limited number of smart bombs, and finally, a hyperspace button that acts as a panic button, teleporting your ship to a random location, as in asteroids. Be warned, hyperspace might save you, or it might rematerialize you right into an enemy, or even cause your ship to explode on the spot. It's a risky last resort. Using all these controls in concert was daunting. Picture it, your left hand on the joystick, weaving up and down, your right hand frantically working 3 buttons, thrust, fire, smart bomb, often simultaneously, and one more finger hovering over hyperspace. It's no wonder a lot of beginners absolutely panicked on their first Defender try. In fact, Jarvis later noted that at the premiere, many folks were literally scared away. I guess it was all the buttons. The joke in arcades was that you didn't play Defender. Defender played you. But for those who mastered this control scheme, the payoff was immense. The ship's responsiveness and the degree of control was unprecedented. A skilled player could do extraordinary feats, reversing direction on a dime to chase a swift baiter, feathering the thrust to hover near a falling human for a perfect catch, or timing a hyperspace jump to narrowly escape certain death. Defender was all about freedom of movement. You could fly anywhere, in any direction at high speed, in a scrolling world, and that was a radical change from the fixed patterns of earlier games. Eugene Jarvis himself has said that, at its core, Defender is about control. The player has full freedom and also full responsibility for what happens. It's a game that makes you feel powerful 1 second and utterly humbled the next. Under the hood, Defender was a marvel of early 80s engineering. It ran on Williams' custom arcade hardware built around a Motorola 6809 microprocessor clocked at roughly 1 megahertz. Yes, just 1 megahertz, which even back then was modest. There was also a secondary Motorola 6808 chip dedicated to sound, generating the game's iconic effects. The developers had to squeeze everything into just a few dozen kilobytes of ROM and RAM memory, coding the entire game in tight assembly language. In fact, the hardware had no special graphics accelerator, no fancy sprite or tile engine, so the CPU had to handle all the explosions, scrolling, and object drawing itself. Williams touted their advanced graphics capabilities, boasting that Defender could put over 80,000 colorful pixel elements on screen, each in any of 256 colors. In truth, that was basically marketing speak. They were essentially highlighting the high resolution and rich color palette the game used, but it was one of the more graphically rich games of 1980. To achieve smooth scrolling and lots of action with so little computing power, Jarvis and DeMar resorted to clever tricks and optimizations. They programmed in pure machine code and likely used every trick in the book to keep the game running at a brisk pace. The result was remarkably smooth animation and responsive controls for the era. The game's visuals were simple by later standards, neon-like line art enemies and a jagged 1-pixel-high terrain line, but they were extremely clear and popped on the screen. The minimalism actually helped gameplay, because with so many things happening, you needed crisp graphics to visually parse the chaos. And the sound, as mentioned, was a standout. Credit to Sam Dicker for creating sounds that were not just bleeps, but whooshes, throbs, and explosions that gave Defender a sonic identity. The smart bomb explosion, for example, was accompanied by a deep bass rumble that you felt in your gut when the arcade volume was cranked up. These technical achievements were all the more impressive considering the tight memory and processing constraints the team faced in 1980. Back in the arcades, Defender quickly proved all the skeptics wrong. It didn't take long after its commercial release, around early 1981, for the game to become a massive hit. Arcade operators who had been lukewarm at the trade show soon realized players were obsessed with Defender's challenge. Williams started getting flooded with orders from arcade distributors. It reached a point where 1 or 2 machines per location wasn't enough. Some busy arcades installed rows of Defender cabinets side by side to keep up with player demand. Remember, a hard game is actually great for business. If people lose quickly but enjoy it, they'll pump in more quarters for just one more try. Defender had exactly that quality. It sent players away frustrated, yet with an urgent desire to try again, as one arcade historian put it. Williams struggled to manufacture cabinets fast enough. They even opened a brand new 60-square-foot production facility in Illinois just to boost output and capitalize on the craze. The numbers tell the story. Defender ultimately sold over 55,000 arcade cabinets worldwide. Some sources put it closer to 60,000, including overseas sales. That made it Williams' best-selling video game ever, and indeed one of the top-grossing arcade games of the entire Golden Age. In terms of revenue, at its peak, Defender was right up there, competing with phenomena like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. In fact, it was so successful that in 1981, the Amusement and Music Operators Association, AMOA, a big coin-op industry body, honored Defender as the Video Game of the Year, beating out Pac-Man for the award. Williams also dominated the Player's Choice Awards in magazines that year. In Playmeter magazine's Operators Poll, Defender was voted the one video game among 6 out of 8 categories that Williams swept thanks to Defender and their hit pinball machines. All this acclaim firmly established Williams as a major player in the video game arena, not just pinball, and Eugene Jarvis as a star designer. Jarvis and Larry DeMar even spun off their own little development group called VidKids under Williams, going on to create more hits like Robotron, 2084, and Stargate, Defender's sequel, in the following years. For players, Defender became more than just a game. It was a badge of honor. If you could hold your own on Defender, you earned serious respect in the arcade. It was common to see someone doing well and a crowd forming, people cheering or gasping as the player narrowly saved the last human or unleashed a smart bomb at the perfect moment. The high difficulty meant that true experts were celebrated, and naturally it spurred competition to set high scores. In the early arcade era, this was the crucible of what we now call esports, high-score contests and marathon gaming sessions. One famous case happened in early 1982. A 15-year-old kid from Illinois named Steve Jurasek set one of the first record-shattering Defender scores. He played on a single quarter for an astounding 16 hours and 34 minutes straight, racking up 15,963 100 points before exhaustion and nature's call finally defeated him. Steve's score, nearly 16 million, was unheard of at the time. Most people struggled to get a few tens of thousands. His marathon feat landed him in Time magazine, making national news as one of the earliest video game high-score champions. And believe it or not, that was just the beginning. As more tournaments were organized, the Twin Galaxies scorekeeping organization tracked ever higher world records. In April 1982, a nationwide Defender contest was held across 33 arcades, and the winner, a Texas native named Billy Kane, received a brand new Stargate machine as a prize, a hint at how serious this had become. Through the 1980s, dedicated players pushed the Defender high score into stratospheric territory by effectively marathoning the game, playing for dozens of hours by accumulating extra lives. The officially recognized world record eventually reached 79,976,975 points on the arcade version. Yes, nearly 80 million points, achieved by gamer Chris Hoffman in a marathon session. To this day, playing Defender at that level is regarded as one of the ultimate classic arcade challenges. As game designer John Harris noted, few modern games require the kind of zen-like focus that Defender does when played for high score. It's essentially a test of endurance, strategy, and sheer reflex that separates the true arcade elite from the casual players. Even beyond the high-score halls of fame, Defender's legacy is immense. It spawned an official sequel in 1981 titled Stargate, sometimes referred to as Defender 2 on home systems, also developed by Jarvis and DeMar. Stargate built on Defender's formula with new enemies and a teleport Stargate mechanic, and while it was a solid success, it never quite eclipsed the original game's iconic status. A decade later, Williams, by then part of Midway, tried a more modern reboot with Strikeforce in 1991, which reimagined the Defender concept with co-op play and updated graphics. And of course, during the 80s, there were countless clones and inspirations. Many early side-scrolling shooters took cues from Defender. For instance, games like Chopper Command on the Atari or Drop Zone on home computers clearly mimicked the human rescue aspect. The whole genre of horizontal shoot-'em-ups owes a debt to Defender's pioneering design. Before Defender, most shooters were either single-screen, like Space Invaders, or free-roaming in an asteroid field. Defender proved you could have a continuously scrolling world with fast-paced action, and it set the template for later classics from Gradius to R-Type. The idea of a minimap radar showing the whole game world, which Defender introduced, became a staple feature not only in later shooters, but in many other genres to come. The concept of protecting innocents and the tension of risk-reward in rescuing them also influenced future games. Jarvis's own Robotron in 1982 had you saving human family members during chaotic battles, which he has said was directly inspired by Defender's rescue mechanic. Culturally, Defender was so big that it even entered the pop culture of the time. It was one of the games immortalized in the 1982 hit novelty album Pac-Man Fever. The song, The Defender, on that album is a tribute to the game. You know a game has made it when it gets its own song in a pop record. And if you look at 80s nostalgia TV or movies, you'll often see a Defender cabinet in the background to signify the classic arcade vibe. It's simply emblematic of the era. What about today? Well, for one, original Defender cabinets remain highly sought after by collectors. Because Williams manufactured so many, the good news is that there are still quite a few out there in the wild, though many were converted into other games by operators in the late 80s, since it was common to swap out older games with new board kits. Enthusiasts note that plenty of Defender machines survived, and you can often find one for sale on collector forums or even eBay without too much trouble. They aren't exactly cheap giveaways, though. Defender units hold their value well, especially if they're in decent condition or restored. In the UK, for example, the demand among retro arcade collectors is consistently high because having an original Defender is considered a cornerstone of any serious arcade collection. It's a game that still commands respect. Fire one up today, and you'll see seasoned arcade fans get a twinkle in their eye, and newcomers quickly gain a new appreciation for the old-school skills it required. Modern gamers who try it through emulation or in re-releases on consoles often come away saying, "Wow, games back then were unforgiving." Yet, as punishing as Defender is, it's also undeniably fun once you get the hang of it. There's a reason it consistently ranks among the top classic arcade games of all time in retrospective lists. The gameplay has a purity and intensity that even after decades of technological progress can still raise your heartbeat. Before we wrap up, let's share a few fun facts and pro tips that every Defender fan should know. First, there's a bit of trivia about the cabinet artwork. Early production. Defender cabinets featured artwork that apparently looked too similar to Star Wars. Williams' art team initially painted a scene with a spaceship and color scheme inspired by the recent Star Wars craze, but management quickly ordered a change to avoid any potential legal issues from Lucasfilm. So the more common Defender cabinet art, the iconic red, yellow, and blue streaks with the title logo, was actually a second version done to steer clear of copyright trouble. If you ever see a Defender with unusual side art, it might be one of those very early prints, a rarity. Another interesting tidbit, in the Attract mode or during boot up, the game code actually contains a list of developer initials or messages, a common Easter egg in many Williams games, though you'd never notice in normal play. And here's something operators loved. Defender had a built-in bookkeeping setting that showed the average playtime per coin, which is where that statistic of 37 seconds per life came from. It proved to operators that a tough game could still earn well, because people would just keep inserting coins. As for gameplay hints, if you're aspiring to not embarrass yourself next time you play, remember a few key strategies. Keep one eye on the radar. It's your best friend for situational awareness, since most of the action, like a human being abducted, starts off-screen where you can't see it without the scanner. Try to stay somewhere near the middle of the map so you can reach either side quickly when a humanoid cries for help. Prioritize landers carrying humans. Those should be your immediate targets before anything else. If a human is falling from high up, catch them. Not only do you save a life, you score bonus points for the rescue, 500 points for catching, and another 500 for safely returning a human to the ground. Use your smart bombs wisely. Don't blow them early on easy enemies. Save them for when the screen is absolutely flooded or when a sudden swarm of swarmers is about to corner you. You only get a limited number, 3 to start, and 1 extra for every 10 0 points if the machine is on default settings, so they are precious get-out-of-jail cards. And be very sparing with hyperspace. Only hit that panic button if you're 100% about to die with no other option, because it's essentially a coin flip whether it will save you or kill you. Top players actually avoid hyperspace entirely except in dire emergencies, as it often spells instant death. Another advanced tactic. Manage the last enemy on a wave. If you leave one lander alive, preferably not a mutant or baiter, you can fly around to pick up any straggling humans and drop them off near the cities so they're safer before you finish the wave. This isn't necessary, but it's a way experts squeeze out a few more points and prepare for the next wave. Speaking of points, once you get good enough to marathon, you'll enter the realm of rollover. Scores. Defender's score display rolls over after 100 points since it has only 7 digits. The true fanatics keep track of how many times they've rolled it into the millions. The competition settings for tournaments often disable extra lives, making the game strictly 5 lives only, tournament mode. Under those rules, anything above 200 points is considered a superb score. To put that in perspective, some casual players never even crack 20-0, so it's a huge gap in skill. And that's perhaps Defender's defining quality. It has an incredibly high skill ceiling. The difference between a beginner and a veteran is night and day. A casual player might frantically zip around and last 30 seconds, whereas an elite player has absolute control, picking off targets in calculated order, hurting the last few enemies, and seemingly performing impossible saves. Watching a defender master at work is awe-inspiring. It looks like they have precognitive abilities, but really it's just practice, pattern recognition, and that zen focus the game demands. In summary, Defender wasn't just a game that gobbled up quarters in 1981. It was a landmark in game design and a cultural touchstone for a generation of gamers. It proved that video games could be blisteringly difficult and wildly successful at the same time. It blended technical innovation, scrolling world, radar, complex controls, with pure white-knuckle gameplay in a way that hadn't been seen before. Eugene Jarvis and his team, coming from a pinball background, basically set a new bar for intensity. As Jarvis later quipped, he's been trying to duplicate the success of Defender ever since, and it's a high bar to clear. The game's legacy lives on each time you see a minimap in a game, or when a modern indie developer tries to capture that satisfying chaos of classic arcade shooters. 4 decades later, tech-savvy guys like us, now in our 40s and 50s, can still remember the adrenaline of Defender, the rush of hearing landers teleport in, the panic of a human screaming help, the triumphant relief of nuking a screen full of swarmers with your last smart bomb, and the sorrow of seeing game over after an epic run. It's the kind of game that imprints on your memory. Defender truly earned its place in arcade history, standing tall among the titans of the golden age. Intelligent, engaging, nostalgic, and fun, it's a game that exemplifies all of those. If you haven't played it, do yourself a favor and give it a shot, preferably on a real arcade machine for the full effect. Just remember, keep your cool, watch that radar, and defend those humans. And that's it for this episode of Coin Detected. If you have any questions or comments, would like to hear me talk about a game I haven't covered yet, or would like to correct something I said, you can reach out to me at coindetected.com. This is Retro Rob. This episode is over, but the game never ends. See you at the arcade.
The sequence is complete. Game over.